This is the story of Scott Quiner, who was hospitalized in November 2021 with serious lung problems. Of course, due to the money and murder in hospitals, he was diagnosed with COVID-19 and put on a ventilator and on heavy sedative drugs. Scott's wife Anne begged the doctors to treat Scott with HCQ, ivermectin, zinc, vitamin D, but the doctors refused. They denied Scott nutrition and fluids. Anne was denied the right to have her husband transported to another hospital. She was shamed and blamed for being unvaccinated. Early January 22, Anne received a phone call from his doctor telling her bluntly they were going to unplug the ventilator that week. At that point, Anne contacted Stu Peters, our independent journalist with his own Stu Peters show and an immense audience. In no time, Anne teamed up with attorney Thomas Renz, famous for fighting the narrative that COVID shots are safe and effective. The hospital was bombarded with over 300,000 phone calls from people who had watched the interview with Anne. The doctors finally succumbed to the voice of the people and let Scott go. He was transported to a hospital in Houston, Texas, where the doctors were shocked and horrified when they saw Scott. They said he was the most undernourished patient they had ever seen, and that they were surprised that he had made it out of that hospital alive. Well, he wouldn't have if it weren't for his wife Anne, Stu Peters, attorney Thomas Renz, and hundreds of thousands of people who let the hospital know the world was watching. The doctors in Texas did everything they could to save Scott, but on January 22, he died due to the injuries he had endured in the hands of the doctors of that Mercy Hospital in Minnesota. In spite of the tragedy at the end, which is absolutely heartbreaking, the good thing is that people started to see the power of their voice. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. You see, there are basically three types of people during a war. There are those who don't even realize they're in a war. There are those who do realize but look the other way, simply because they are afraid for their own skin. They call themselves awake, but they don't stand up for others. This is always the biggest group. Think about World War II, when most people looked away when the Jews were deported and murdered. Then there are those who fight. Not with guns in this war, but with action. That's the group we're looking for, hoping to connect so we can fight together, so we can make a change. Anne Quiner contacted warrior Stu Peters, who asked his warrior viewers to act and call the hospital. They did, in great numbers, and the doctors got scared. They knew they were being watched. They knew they will, one day, be held accountable for crimes against humanity. Scott was set free. He didn't make it, but at least he died in the arms of his loved ones, who know for a fact they tried everything they possibly could to save him. It is time people start to realize just how powerful they are. When you, the 99%, get together, when you get organized in groups of active warriors, there is nothing that can stop you. No corrupt hospital can stand the pressure of thousands of people calling them, letting them know they are being monitored, that the world knows about their hideous crimes against humanity. Do you really think those doctors will sleep at night from that moment on? Do you really think they will remain true to their holy protocols? We don't think so. So, what can you do when your loved one is hospitalized for whatever reason? First and foremost, refuse to talk to interns, residents, or anyone who doesn't know everything there is to know. Then tell the doctors you know about the false positives. Refuse a nose swab at all times. If it truly cannot be avoided, demand a cotton swab, not a fiber swab. Demand the swab to be performed in the mouth, not deep inside the nose. Then demand no more PCR cycles than 20. Demand it in writing. Your loved one will be tested negative. If the doctors claim the outcome was positive, demand to see the documents. Then, if there's surgery involved, your loved one might be put on a ventilator, which is normal. But when the surgery is over, demand face up. Being on a vent face down damages the lungs. Then, check the IV non-stop and take pictures of whatever is being administered. Do not allow remdesivir, midazolam and/or Regencov. Morphine should be sufficient to ease the pain. If instead they administer fentanyl or even sufentanil, ask the doctors why. Why on earth administer a painkiller 80 to 500 times as powerful as morphine? Demand they remove it from the IV. What helps is when you know your medical jargon. Therefore, watch our episodes about money and murder in hospitals several times and take notes. If the doctor asks you for permission to administer Regencov and you say no, just no, that will trigger a discussion. But if instead you say, no, why on earth would you apply post-exposure prophylaxis therapy? That will shut the doctors up, we promise you. You might even add, are you aware of the fact that Regencov is an experimental drug? Do you even know you are not to administer it when a patient is already in the hospital? What is going on here? From that moment on, those doctors will be extra careful. We guarantee it. If the doctors still dare try and overrule you, tell them bluntly you know about the COVID incentives they receive. Tell them you are watching them, and so is the world via social media. Be strong, be vigilant, be a warrior. Remind them of their oath of Hippocrates to save lives, not cause harm. If they refuse to listen, film everything and use every social media outlet you know to get as many other warriors out there to call that hospital, that doctor, that nurse. Let them know they will never beat the 99%. You see, if everyone did this, not just for those he loves, but also for strangers in need, there would be no problem. There would be no money and murder capstone in hospitals. Therefore, act. Do organized protests help? We have our doubts. If that really worked, don't you think the French yellow vests, the most resilient of them all, would have been able to get rid of Macron? Don't you think Occupy would have worked? The problem with these mass events is that they are always infiltrated by the cabal. Always. This causes internal conflict, different opinions about what to do next. Divide and conquer. Eventually, all of these events, no matter how great, always blow out like a candle in the night. All the cabal has to do is wait, probably with a big grin. Every now and then, they push some paid actors forward who cause mayhem amongst the peaceful protesters, which is then shown on telly by the mainstream media. Please do not ever forget, organized protests are fully welcomed by the cabal, as they are part of the Protocols of Zion. See part 4 of this sequel. Neither do we believe signing petitions has any effect. How many did you sign in the past? Did any of them have any effect at all? Sure, when enough signatures are collected, your government might be obliged to discuss the subject. But knowing your government is filled to the brim with cabal puppets, do you really believe that will change anything? There is no such thing as a democracy anymore. Please wake up and realize that to the fullest. We are being played. Do you remember our farce? It sounded good, didn't it? We were shocked too upon discovering they were set up and paid for by the cabal. All petitions do is collect your name and email address in a database that can and will be used against you when the time has come. As for the Netherlands, thanks to the D66, we lost our right to have referendums, remember? So, do you really still believe in the power of your signature? What do we believe in? Organised action as shown in the case of Scott Quiner. Write emails and letters, make phone calls, drive them insane. That is not part of the protocols of Zion. Now, this kind of organised action can be deployed in endless scenarios. We highly recommend you use the Amnesty International Protocol, which has proven to be most effective. Pressure by the 99% always works. At this moment in time, take a look at protocolkills.com, a great and inspiring initiative of civilians. As Amnesty International seems nowhere to be found right now, most certainly not in the Netherlands where they are badly needed, we'll have to take matters into our own hands, just like Protocol Kills is doing. Study their approach. Then organize a group of active people around you and make a list of your priorities. Which cases are most important to interfere with right now? For instance, 5G masts in your neighborhood on the rooftops of hospitals, schools, water reservoirs and homes for the elderly. Or how about censorship by social media platforms and deliberate disinformation by the mainstream media? And a very important one, the imprisonment of civilians who criticize government policy. We once thought this only happened in countries like China, but it's happening everywhere in Europe right now. What to do next? Write or call your government or your local government or the embassy or the mainstream media, depending on the case. Tell them about their case on your list. Make clear that you know that the world is watching their every move, that the people no longer accept this, that you do not comply, that you hold them accountable for any physical, mental, and/or emotional injuries as a result of their action. Don't threaten anybody, just state it as a matter of fact. How to deal with censorship by social media? Delete your account and ask everybody in your network to do the same. If only people could rise above their precious amount of likes and followers, those platforms would collapse. No users, no profits, no happy CEOs, and thus no future. The censorship will then destroy them, not you. When thousands of people do this, it will have effect. Remember, the 1% truly fears the power of the 99%. We'll give you one more example. New York's Governor, Andrew Cuomo. Write him a letter about his executive order making HCQ illegal. Name the executive order's number. Let him know you know your stuff. And don't forget to add that by making hydroxychloroquine illegal, he made himself guilty of genocide. You see, there are more than 50 scientific studies proving the highly beneficial effects of HCQ on viruses and other pathogens. But Cuomo lied and denied this fact. Instead of allowing citizens to choose their own way to cure themselves of our highly overrated COVID-19, instead of allowing doctors to prescribe HCQ to their patients, he made it illegal. This was a crime in and of itself. HCQ has amply proven to kill pathogens successfully and quickly. It was originally the cure for malaria. By making it illegal, this cure was criminalized and banned. Why? Because of two reasons. One, simply because Big Pharma makes billions on vaccines and only a few bucks on HCQ. We know by now who has total control over politicians when it comes to pharmaceuticals. 2. Vaccinations cannot be made mandatory if an alternative cure exists. Let me wait a few seconds so you can read that again. Since that alternative cure had been there from the start, they had to make it illegal. That was the only way to push their agenda of mandatory vaccinations into effect. Remember this: anyone pushing the mandatory vaccination narrative is guilty of crimes against humanity. What Cuomo and many other cabal puppets across the world did was highly illegal. They made themselves guilty of the death of countless innocent people, both by denying them the right to be treated with HCQ and as a result of the medical experiment called the COVID-19 vaccine. The amount of people who have died of vaccinations has risen with approximately 5,000% compared to previous years, more about which in an upcoming episode. These people didn't have to die. Tell Cuomo or his colleague in your state, in your country, all of the above. Tell him that in the near future he will be held accountable for his crimes against humanity in a court of law, because the 99% no longer obey. Oh, and you know what happened in the Netherlands? On March 26, 2020, the Dutch Minister of Health, Welfare and Sport, Hugo de Jonge, officially put a ban on HCQ. Doctors and apothecaries were no longer to prescribe it for treating COVID-19. But 1 week later, he gave orders to import large amounts of HCQ from India. Why? He knew damn well they weren't going to use it on the citizens. We found it highly suspicious, so we looked for the RIVM's advice. But all we could find on their website about the use of HCQ is, well, nothing. De Jonge had said it was not for politicians to advise about the use of medication, which we fully agree with. Unfortunately, he lied. According to WOB documents, he did interfere, and he wasn't the only politician. They were the ones who made sure that the cure for COVID-19 was made illegal, so they could eventually push the vaccines down the throats of the Dutch citizens. We think just about everybody knows by now that our cabal puppets in The Hague are very, very corrupt. Take Ab Osterhaus, virologist and alleged independent advisor to the government. He was caught on video celebrating the first case of swine flu in the Netherlands. Why was that a reason to celebrate? Because he had so many shares in the vaccine producers that he made millions and millions of euros in only a matter of weeks.
Net na 12 uur gisteravond heeft VWS een order geplaatst voor 34 miljoen doses. Succes.
Independent advisor, right. Was he prosecuted? Of course not. He is still there, doing his criminal thing. Oh, and then there was the face mask scandal, starring Hugo de Jonge. He gave the order to fabricate 40 million useless and toxic masks to his friend Siewert van Linden, owner of Hulptroepen Foundation and Relief Goods Alliance, for the staggering amount of 100.8 million euros. The RIVM advised against the deal, as they had analysed the face masks and had found a high level of graphene oxide and other nanoparticles which are dangerous to inhale. Still, the deal between the ministry and van Linden went ahead. The fact that the purchase of protective materials wasn't even part of Minister de Jonge's portfolio makes this case even more suspicious. The deal made van Linden and his two business partners multi-millionaires. And no doubt, Minister de Jonge got his fair share of the deal. The masks were never used because of their poor, even dangerous quality. Now the good news is that as I speak these words into my editing program, a criminal investigation is held into this face mask scandal. As millions of euros were funneled from the foundation to the BV, the Dutch version of a limited liability company, and subsequently to the private bank accounts of the 3 CEOs, which is a criminal offence, and as they repeatedly lied in interviews about giving the masks away for free, the 3 are now being investigated for fraud, embezzlement and money laundering. We wonder how much longer before they all get what they deserve. And we mean all parties involved. Not very long, we suspect. Film rights about this subject have already been sold. Things are speeding up concerning the fall of the cabal. Once again, as I speak these words into my editing program, the Georgia Guidestones have been blown to pieces only a few hours ago. The rest of the evil monument was demolished straight away. By whom? Take a wild guess, my friends. As this was a paramount and most sacred object for the cabal, we don't think it was them who did it. Let's put it that way. Right, back to our storyline of planned mandatory vaccinations and thus the illegalization of HCQ. The same happened, by the way, with ivermectin, a parasite killer just like HCQ. In the Netherlands and other countries, many doctors prescribed it to patients with flu symptoms, as it had turned out to be a very effective cure. But all of a sudden it was made illegal. It was ridiculed by the mainstream media as just a horse dewormer promoted by extreme right conspiracy idiots. Those doctors who kept on prescribing ivermectin and HCQ were intimidated by public health inspectors and threatened with immense fines, up to 150,000 euros. Those who pursued were criminalized, both by the inspection and by the mainstream media, who deliberately spread lies about them, trying to break them and set an example to intimidate other doctors. Some lost their medical license or practice, others were fired. Thank God there are always some heroes who do not break and who do not give up their integrity and their oath to Hippocrates. The people who ordered ivermectin abroad received a letter from Dutch Royal Mail stating that customs had intercepted their package and had confiscated the ivermectin. People were shocked and appalled. How dare they interfere with their body, their choice? Unfortunately, being shocked and appalled doesn't change anything these days. The only thing that works is action. So, is there anything else you can say when confronted with mandatory vaccinations? These so-called vaccines are a medical experiment. Even though this is fiercely denied by fact-checkers, they are all still in that experimental stage. Yes, they may have been approved by the FDA to be deployed during a medical emergency, but that does not change the fact that they are still a medical experiment. Medical experiments should never be made mandatory. Never! Ask whoever is pushing the mandatory jab, whether it's the government, your family doctor, or your employer, if they remember World War II and the medical experiments the Nazi doctors performed on the Jewish people. This is why the Nuremberg Code was set up in 1947, so that these monstrosities would never happen again. Ask them if they know that these experimental vaccines are in violation of all the 10 articles of the Nuremberg Code that carry the death penalty. Ask them if they know that the experimental vaccines are in violation of Article 32 of the 4th Geneva Convention. Medical or scientific experiments not necessitated by the medical treatment of a protected person are prohibited. In other words, everyone who pushes mandatory jabs will go down for crimes against humanity and may be sentenced to death, depending on the country or state they reside. Let that sink in. So, get organized. Be the 99%. Be the warrior this war needs. Spread this information far and wide. Step up for those in need. Be the third group in every war. Those who are awake and have the guts to fight. Not only for your own rights and for those of your children, but also for total strangers.
They say they have a right to take you to some facility and to test you and to medicate you against your freaking will. Are you free? So let's not lie to the children and tell them about freedom, because your freedom is being infringed as we are standing here, and you need to be made aware of it. Mainstream media is not going to make you aware of it. You need to do your own research.
Be the resistance. Not with guillotines, not with threats, but with a set of completely different weapons. By getting organized, by letting your voice be heard, by using uncensored social media to reach as many people as possible, and the best weapon of all, by spreading knowledge and information. Use the knowledge we give to you in these documentaries. Only then can we take down the cabal. Once all-powerful and mighty, now in panic mode and crumbling. How about we wrap this whole COVID scam up in the next episode, so we can continue with our original story about the cabal, their origins, their brilliant insanity, and their deliberate history falsification, so we, the people, would never know. Follow me to part 25.